Welcome back to the Magic Academy. Today we're going to be doing an update on where the channel's at and what's been going on in my current life. Okay, so last year around this time, I was ready, or actually in January of 2018, I was ready to really give this channel some extra special attention and really restart this channel. And I was starting to upload videos 2 to 3 times a week, and that was being consistent. So, you know, I had so many ideas of where I wanted to go over the summer and then leading into fall and so on. I had a tragedy, and that really put some things on hold as far as like me even having the ability to do videos for you guys and for the channel. After spring started this year in 2019, and, you know, I was ready for it to be a really awesome year starting off, and it has been so far. I can't say that it hasn't been, especially compared to previous years. This year's gone, you know, pretty awesome so far, I have to say, as far as consistency and everything. So, you know, I'm trying to get back on the channel again. But something happened that kind of made me go, you know, what is going on? So a couple of things. One thing in particular that I'll show you guys some video from my security monitor as well. I was sitting here at home and I got a knock at the door, and I was expecting it to be a pizza delivery guy because I had just ordered pizza and it was like supposed to be at my house. And so I opened the door really quick thinking it was overdue to be here. So I thought it was the pizza guy. And the guy standing at my door was like some familiar guy, right? I like knew his look. Like, who is this guy? And he starts talking and saying, "Can you tell me where to get to the freeway? I'm like lost, etc., etc." And I looked at him and I said, "You know me, and I know you." Turns out, I mean, it didn't take long, just a couple of minutes before things started clicking. This guy, turns out, is my ex-husband's best friend from high school.
You and your divorce, or
no?
She was not with you. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you never know.
I mean, his best friend. They shared the same name. They hung out together and did everything together throughout high school. They were besties, and you know, so him stopping at my door like that just didn't seem like a coincidence. You know, it seemed very suspect to me. And the fact that he was, you know, stating what he was saying, here's why it was an accident, why I don't believe that it was an accident that my ex-husband's best friend showed up at my door, okay? Why I do not believe it at all. First off, you know, where he had to drive, where I'm positioned in my apartment complex where I live, is not where you would typically pull off the road and have the convenient apartment right there for you to knock on the door and say, you know, "Hey, can you tell me how to get to the freeway?" Also, why wouldn't he just go to the office instead of to my apartment? And finally, the thing that really is just crazy, why would you walk upstairs and knock on an apartment door to ask for directions? A strange place, a strange apartment, positioned in an awkward place in the building. Definitely not right off the road if you're just looking for directions. And fourth and final reason why is because, you know, there are a couple of gas stations within the block where I live as well. So wouldn't that be more appropriate to ask them for directions to the freeway as opposed to accidentally just finding my apartment door and asking me for directions? You just don't accidentally there's just too many factors in the equation that say, red flag, that's not a coincidence. Red flag, that's not a coincidence. Red flag, that's not a coincidence. At least 4 red flags. That's not a coincidence. So why is my ex-husband's best friend knocking on my door to pretend like he wants directions to the freeway? What was that about? I have no idea. I really don't know, but it was very odd. Here's another oddity. I mean, let me know your guys' opinion, what you think about that. Do you believe that many red flags? As far as like, wouldn't it have been easier? I mean, how logical would it be to drive to my apartment door when, I mean, what do you guys think of that? Let me know. And in saying all of this, I don't have a good friendship with my ex-husband. And I met this guy and his current wife through my ex-husband when I was attending a church that they attended. And I met them after I met my ex-husband. Okay, I met him first. And through him, I met this guy, his best friend, and his wife when they were just friends, when we were all just friends. But they were his friends, and I was being included in the group. You know what I mean? So when we divorced, obviously I didn't keep a friendship with them. They stuck on his side. That was his best friend from high school. We did not maintain contact. It was over. So it just seems really odd that he would show up at my door that way. Something was very wrong about that. And like I said, again, my ex-husband and I did not end, we didn't have very good relations during our marriage. We were 2 opposite personalities as far as like, our balance of good and evil was opposite of each other, and we just really didn't fit well together. Okay, and it caused a lot of violence in the marriage. So the divorce was harsh, the marriage was harsh. It was one, scarring event in my life. The only good thing that came from it is my children. That's absolutely the only good thing that came from it. When we were still going through court proceedings for child custody, okay, back early 2000s, it was no longer custody is something I had to appeal, but he was fighting for more child support. I was at the homeless shelter, okay? I had gone to the homeless shelter. And so this is early 2000s. So I'm at the homeless shelter, and 3 a.m, I get woken up by the lady that, is monitoring, the security lady that's monitoring the homeless shelter that morning. 3 a.m. And there's flashlights, and there's police officers in the hallway, more than one. And they take me out of bed, take me to the hallway. They were a little bit nice at first. They let me gather some things, and then they, handcuffed me and took me to jail treated me like I was a really harsh criminal that they were picking up from the homeless shelter. And what had happened was, while I was at the homeless shelter, you don't have an address. Your address is in transition. So, of course, I had updated my address here and there, but I had not gotten the letter for the recent, because I had just gotten to the homeless shelter. So I had not gotten a letter for my court date that they had set and requested for it to be an immediate hearing. And so I missed it. Therefore, a warrant was issued for my arrest for missing a court date, for not showing up to court. Yeah, I know, basically the right thing to do is to show up to court. That is the only thing they want you to say when they're talking to you about it. Well, you have to show up to court. I respect all of that. But with my situation, it was beyond my means to be able to receive even the court date. So it's not like I missed it on purpose. I just wasn't even notified. I didn't even know it was happening. And the way that my ex knew I was at the homeless shelter is because I'd asked my mom to drop off some candy to the kids, and in the bag, because it was around Halloween. So in the bag, my mom had left a note like I had asked her to, saying, here's the address, here's where she's staying if there's an emergency with the kids. And so that's how so I mean, if he knew where I was at, how come they couldn't get the letter to me? They could have gotten it served, whatever. So when I went to jail, you guys, the judge had said to me, well, we're not going to leash you on your own recognizance because you're homeless. So you're a risk at not showing up to court. Keep that in mind. Because you're homeless, you're at risk of not showing up to court. Now, regardless of what I had just said about me not showing up before or I hadn't been notified, now I knew what was going on. I knew I was going to be having a court date. My mother had been contacted by them. We had an actual physical address that we had agreed on where I was going to get my mail. So we had resolved the problem. Other than me being homeless, I was still homeless, but we had a way for me to get mail at this point in time now. And they still wouldn't release me on my own recognizance. And my judge was going for family law, there was only one for whatever reason, and he was going on vacation. So they kept me in jail, not in the police jail. They literally booked me into the prison jail for 6 weeks or a little bit longer until my court date. So I was, wearing the Arizona stripes during that time, waiting to, stand in front of the judge and tell my side of the story of it was really, uncontrollable circumstance. And once I did get in front of him, they apologized and said, you shouldn't have even been in here, especially this long. And then they just released me within an hour of the court date. And I mean, just dropped me off outside. That was it. Not very much of an apology, slight, very quiet apologies, and didn't really, it was just horrible. Okay. So saying all of that, then I had a really crazy thing happen as far as my identity. I've over the past 5 to 6 years, I have had my debit card numbers stolen electronically at least once a year, almost once a year. So, that has given me a lot of downtime, and, it's hard to fight depending on which situation it is. Not that I'm jumping subjects. This is going to apply to being released on your own recognizance. Okay, so keep that in mind. And each time I've not been able to get prosecution for the person who's done it to me because it's all been digital. It's been really hard to find the person each time who's done it. Well, it happened again last month. And last month it was a little bit easier because the person had actually got a hold of my card physically. And it was a homeless guy, kind of close to my neighborhood, or kind of close to the neighborhood where my son was at one point in time. My son dropped his wallet. My card was in there. The homeless guy had picked up the wallet about an hour or so after my son was at this one location. And he decided he was going to use that card. Once an hour almost, all night long until about 10 a.m. the next day. I mean, he just kept going into gas stations and kept using it. He went to a tobacco shop. I mean, he was just purchasing small ticket items, but he just kept going back in once an hour. I don't understand it. Maybe he just wanted to have something to do with his time. I don't know. I've been homeless. I know what it's like. So I did have to call the police station and report it, and they're like, well, hopefully we can, find the guy. Fortunately, there was footage on one of the stores where he had done some shopping, and they were able to find him within 24 hours. All right. Okay. So I was like feeling relieved. He had our addresses at this point because he'd had the wallet. So he had our addresses, our identities, you know, pictures of my son, pictures of everyone my son had in his wallet. So we were all kind of like, oh my gosh, is this guy dangerous? He's got our address. And the police let me know that the guy was homeless but released on his own recognizance until the court date, where his plea hearing. I was really taken back, you guys. I was like, what do you mean? He's released on his own recognizance. Early 2000s, I wasn't released on my own recognizance. It just didn't seem fair. So why? Why was it different between then and now? And why was this guy, I mean, he's had other situations. Why was he released on his own recognizance and I wasn't released on mine, where I had had no record at all? It just didn't seem fair. It just seemed really prejudiced to me. It's something. There was something in that situation where they just, they kept saying to me back then, they were like, the officers kept saying, you should pay your child support. Women should learn to pay their child support. Us men have to pay it. You women should learn to pay it. So, and it wasn't one officer that said it. They all kept saying it. And it's like that. I was going to court not for non-payment. They were trying to get more money while I was at the homeless shelter. He was trying to ask for a raise, basically. So, was it because these male officers that were handling me mostly, or the male judges, were very prejudiced at me being a female and in there for any kind of child custody or child support payment, and they just thought that I needed the book thrown at me, even though I had a completely blank record in the police department? They just wanted to keep me for 6 weeks to be vengeful. Because if it was a guy, and one officer I think even said that, this was a guy, he would stay in court, he would have to stay in jail until court hearing. I hope you have to stay in there. And sure enough, I did have to stay for 6 weeks. But this guy that, just used my credit card and wasn't going to give it back, and as a matter of fact had lost it, it wasn't recovered. They did recover some of, everything in my son's wallet except for the wallet itself and my card. So, and he was released on his own recognizance. I don't think that's fair at all. I don't think how I was treated was fair. I think they were being overly fair with him, but I don't think they were being fair with me originally. Okay, so there's, some conspiracy as well. But as I'm looking at it, of course I've got information on the guy, and I thought I would check him out on Facebook if I could find him perchance, and perchance I did. So I find this guy on Facebook, and his old address is where I went to 8th grade. Same area, just avenues away from each other on the same street of my school. He's also he's friends with a official of our state and one of the court clerks. We're not going to say which one. And so his dad. His dad is also friends with them on their Facebook. So it isn't just a follow friendship, like I'm following you. His family have multiple friends with this guy as well. So, maybe that's why. Because he's connected with officials and I'm not. So, not that these situations have anything to do with each other as far as being the exact conspiracy or the exact same weirdness that's happening in my life right now, but that they happen so close together, I'm sharing them with you. Okay? And sometimes that happens. Sometimes something happens and we're like, oh, this is weird. And then another thing happens that is just as weird. And it would be easy just to take the conspiracy route and say, oh, it's the same thing. Somebody's coming at me. and we ignore all the facts. But we can't do that. That's being a little bit paranoid, even when it feels that way. Just look at the red flags, and what it is for what it is. The first situation, in other words, when the guy, my ex-husband's best friend, who I haven't seen him or his wife in over 20 years. It's one of those things that, wouldn't you be embarrassed if after you said it, as soon as you're saying it, you realize this is pretty obvious that they're going to be able to see through what I'm saying. You'd kind of be a little bit red-faced, wouldn't you? You haven't seen the person in 20 years and you accidentally show up at their door, which is an upstairs apartment located in a strange, hard to reach part of the complex, not right off the road. If you're driving somewhere, you drive and maybe barely go off the road. You don't go too far off the road. It doesn't add up, especially since there were gas stations around me, which are places to go for directions. Right? It's quite transparent that there was some other reason, and I don't think he felt like telling me what the situation was when he realized that his story was so transparent. And the second situation, as far as like the kid, he's like 30 some years old. The homeless guy that stole my card and used it. That, I think, is just kind of like a lesson from the universe. Not like a lesson, possibly, but more of the universe trying to help share some information with me, like validating how I have been feeling all these years after I had been arrested in early 2000 for, not committing the same level of situation that he was. Like, the reason I was in jail was for missing a court date for family law, not for a crime. I missed a court date for family law. So I'm not saying that it wasn't wrong. I'm saying that family law is not the same degree as criminal law. Okay? Criminal law is always a step up from just family to start discussions in court. So for a criminal who, by the way, at his plea hearing, which was weeks later after his release, has still only provided the court with an email address. And I know this because I was there for the plea hearing, and the prosecuting attorney told me he still doesn't have an address. All he's provided us with, he just told the judge, he still only has his email address. He's still, his parents, nobody will let him use their address. So he has no address to even receive mail. Huh. That's funny, because way back in early 2000, they wouldn't release me because they were afraid that I would be a risk at not showing because I was homeless, didn't have a permanent address to receive mail, although I had updated information. I had updated, at my time of arrest, an address where they could deliver mail, an address where I would receive mail daily. I had given them a phone number. I had a cell phone. I had given them an email. I provided them with everything. And they wouldn't release me, but they would release him, and it was a crime. So I think the universe was just trying to say, okay, let me validate you. Okay? And that's what I got. It was some validation from the universe on that one. I do think that there is something suspect about this guy that we do need to watch out for. Who knows? Maybe he was paid to follow us around, and that's how he was the one who found the wallet. It's possible, who don't even know what else could be the situation. But there's one thing as far as like the universe sometimes validating you, and that's how spirit will talk to us sometimes. Sometimes when spirit wants to talk to us, maybe it won't put us in the situation again. Maybe it will have us around somebody who's going to go through a similar situation and mirror it to us, something similar that we experienced. And the differences in what you're seeing in the mirror experience are definitely big communications from spirit telling you, and look at this, and think about this. It's definitely one of the ways that spirit teaches us, because we all learn best by what is familiar to us what we know and what we experience. So if we're around a situation that it mirrors something that we've been through, then it is an awesome time to put out your senses there. I mean, like, put on your senses and say, hey, is the universe trying to show me something with me witnessing this situation? Stay tuned to the next video. It's going to be really interesting. Isaiah 53 from the Christian Bible and why it's not in the Hebrew Jewish Bible. So stay tuned for that one. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch me in all my videos. And I guarantee you, it may take a little time, but we're going to get this channel to where it's going to be a lot more fun to watch. Blessed be.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Also, if you're looking for more, go ahead and click the image in the center. That'll take you to all my playlists, and you can find me on my social media in the description below.